Hello friends, and welcome back to part 2 of this orchid video. In the first part I had shown how I had purchased 5 orchids from the website Pots and Petals. I had also shown how I had created the orchid potting container, and in this video I am going to show how I repotted my orchids and how I created the orchid potting mix, and all of these are DIYs. The orchids which I had purchased belonged to the Dendrobium variety, and these are beginner friendly orchids and are easy to grow and care for. These orchids can also withstand a little bit of sunlight if you want to grow them under a little bit of sun. For the potting mix I have used coconut husk, so whenever I buy a coconut I keep the ends, the husk which is present on the ends of the coconut, and I have used that. I cut these coconut husks into smaller pieces because my container was a little small. After this I put all the smaller pieces into a container and I filled it up with water to soak in the coconut husk, as I live in India and most of the coconut found over here are grown near the ocean, and I didn't want any salty coconut husk to kill off my orchids. So to be on the safe side and to avoid any salt getting into my orchids, it is better to soak off the coconut husk for about a week and to change the water 2-3 times in between, so that just in case any salt is there in the husk, that will be removed. Along with the coconut husk I have taken some wood charcoal and some pieces of broken brick. You can buy this wood charcoal online, or you can even get it from the iron men who use wood charcoal to put in the iron for ironing the clothes. I bought the charcoal locally and I washed the brick and the charcoal also. You can also use peanut shells, walnut shells or pistachio shells. Make sure that these are not salted. If they are salted, if they have been roasted over salt, then again you'll have to put it in water to remove off the salt, as I did with the coconut husk. But today I'm not going to use these shells as they were salty and I didn't have time to clean them up. So I'm just going to use the coconut husk, the charcoal and the bricks. I mixed the 3 ingredients properly and created the potting mix. Next I took the orchid plants and one by one I removed the tags. I put these tags on the orchid planter. I had made a hole specifically to mark the plants using the tags which were given along with the plant. So in this manner I put them on the planter. Next I filled up the planter with the potting mix and I made sure to put some pieces of brick on the lower part of the planter. This will give it a little bit more stability, as the lower part will become a little heavier and it won't topple off with the wind. I took the orchid plant and I removed off any dead decaying roots which I could find using a sterile scissor. You can use alcohol, rubbing alcohol to clean the scissor before cutting off the roots. And in this manner gently I removed some of the dead roots. I didn't do any deep cleaning because I am a beginner and I didn't want to kill the plant before I could actually repot them. So I just cleaned off some basic dead roots which I was sure would not grow. The next time when I have to repot them, I'll remove off each and every of the dead root that I find. I repeated this process on all 5 of the orchids which I had got. Some of the orchids were having really good roots and others were not having a good root system. Most of the roots were almost dead, but if you plant them properly then it can definitely give out new roots very quickly. After the basic cleanup of the roots, I put the orchid inside the planter and I added more potting mix all around. Orchids should be planted firmly, but there should be sufficient space all around for air circulation also. So in this manner I finished up repotting my orchid. This is how the orchid container should look once you have filled in the potting mix, neither too tight nor too loose. This is how the orchids are looking after I repotted them, and some of them had these large aerial roots and I left them like so. They can take moisture from the atmosphere if they are living. And only one orchid had a yellow leaf. I think it was because of too much sunlight which is down there. The yellow leaf fell off, so I removed it after a couple of days, and the rest of the orchids were doing really well. The next step after repotting is watering the orchids, and this is one great method to water the orchids. Simply dunk the planter into a container filled with water. Make sure that the water does not enter in between the leaves, because if the water stays there, it might lead to rotting of the orchids. That is the only precaution needed. It was the first time I was actually watering these. After repotting, I soaked it in water for about 5 to 7 minutes till the whole of the potting mix took up the water, and then I took it out and let off the excess water to drain out. The second method to water these orchids is by using a sprayer bottle and by spraying on top of the container till the water runs out from the bottom. This method can also be used. Tip for watering of orchids: water only after touching the potting mix. If it is dry, then only you should water the plant. Overwatering kills more orchids than underwatering, so do not ever overwater your orchids. About 3 to 4 weeks, this is how the orchids are looking. New roots have come out in all the orchids. As you can see over here, they really loved this potting mix, and the watering was also done adequately for the roots to come out. DIY containers were small and well aerated. I dunked it in a tub full of water twice a week, and occasionally I used to spray a little bit of water on the top part for the roots to grow. Since the orchids delivered were of a good quality, the roots developed very quickly. I also found some new leaves unfurling, and this little leaf had come out recently. I also found that the orchids were growing really nicely. Another tip to keep the leaves nice and shiny: you can mist off the plant in the early morning time so that by evening the water gets dried out. And this is one method how you can clean the leaves if you are living in a very dusty area. If there is any water retention in between the leaves, then as I've told you before, make sure that the water is removed, otherwise it will lead to the orchid rotting off from there. Do not want that to happen, so just in case there is water in between, remove it with a piece of tissue or a piece of cloth. So this I do not prefer too much. Just for the sake of video, I showed you how it's to be done. The method which I use is, I use a wet cloth and I simply rub off the leaves, because the orchids are not having too many leaves. It does not take me too much time to do this thing. So I remove the dust etc. by using a wet cloth, so there is no chance of water entering in between the leaves and rotting off the plant, and this keeps the leaf also nice and shiny. Whenever you find the leaves looking too dusty or dirty, you can use this method easily. This is all I have for you today in this video. I hope you found this video useful, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and thanks for watching.